The war had been raging for years. Humanity had fought, bled, and died against an enemy that showed no mercy. The Vorik Empire, a ruthless and technologically superior alien force, had crushed countless civilizations, leaving only ruins in their wake. Now, Earth stood as the final battleground. The Vorik were certain of their victory. Their warlords spoke of humanity as nothing more than another weak species, another footnote in their empire's long history of conquest. But they had underestimated Earth. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. And tonight, they would hear the last warning they would ever receive. Inside the fortified command center beneath the remains of old Chicago, the Earth Defense Council gathered for what could be their final war meeting. The room was dimly lit, the massive holographic war table displaying a chilling reality. The Vorik fleet was already in position, surrounding Earth like a pack of wolves. Their invasion forces were set to descend within the hour. Panic and fear were present in the eyes of some of the officers, but at the head of the table stood General Helena Grayson, her expression cold and unreadable. She had fought the Vorik longer than anyone in the room, had seen what they did to entire planets, to entire civilizations. She was not afraid. She was angry. "Open the transmission," she ordered. A technician nodded, pressing a series of commands on the console. The screen in the center of the room flickered to life, and within seconds, the face of Vorik Supreme Commander Zalroth appeared. He was a monstrous figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with dark crimson scales and 4 burning yellow eyes. His mandibles clicked in what almost sounded like amusement, and the deep growl of his voice filled the room. "Ah, General Grayson," Zalroth said, his tone laced with arrogance. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't bother sending a reply. Are you here to surrender? To beg for mercy?" The Vorik officers behind him chuckled, their laughter echoing through the transmission. Grayson didn't flinch. She simply stared at the warlord, her gaze unwavering. "You think this is over?" she asked, her voice calm, controlled. "You think we've shown you everything?" Zalroth's mandibles twitched in what could have been a smirk. "Your defenses are shattered. Your fleets have been reduced to wreckage. We're already on our way. You are finished." Grayson leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on the table. "Let me make something very clear, Commander. You and your empire think you understand what humanity is. You think we're weak, that we're fragile. But you've only ever seen the side of us that fights with restraint, with rules." Zalroth let out a low, rumbling laugh. "Is that so? And what do you plan to do? Throw more of your insignificant soldiers at us? You have nothing left." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the war table's holograms. Grayson's expression darkened. "You have no idea what we're capable of." She straightened, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. "No more mercy." The Vorik commander's laughter faded. The air seemed to shift. There was something in Grayson's words, something that made even Zalroth pause. Grayson continued, her voice steady, final. "You think you're monsters? You think you're the apex predators of the galaxy? You haven't seen what we've been hiding. You haven't met our real monsters." The Vorik officers behind Zalroth exchanged uncertain glances. The warlord's confident expression flickered for the briefest moment, but he recovered quickly. "You humans and your empty threats. It won't matter. Your world burns tonight." Grayson simply smirked. "Then come and find out." With a nod to the technician, the transmission was cut. The screen went black, leaving the war room in silence. The tension in the air was heavy, but Grayson could feel the shift in the room. The fear was still there, but now there was something else, something colder. Anticipation. Colonel Vance, one of the highest-ranking officers present, stepped forward. "Ma'am, are we really doing this?" Grayson turned to him. "We don't have a choice. We held back because we thought we could win with conventional forces. We were wrong. Now, we show them what we've been preparing for." Vance exhaled, nodding. "Project Revenant?" Grayson's eyes didn't waver. "Deploy them." The officers exchanged looks, but no one argued. The choice had been made. Orders were relayed, and deep beneath the Earth's surface, far below where any Vorik scanners could reach, something stirred. Metal doors, miles underground, began to open. Stasis chambers hummed to life, releasing figures that had not seen the light of day for years. Figures that were not entirely human anymore. Creatures engineered from the DNA of Earth's deadliest predators, enhanced with nanotechnology and biomechanical augmentations, designed for one purpose: to destroy anything that threatened humanity. As alarms blared and containment locks were disengaged, the Earth itself seemed to tremble. The Vorik had come expecting a dying world, an easy conquest. They had no idea that humanity had become something else. Grayson stood at the war table, watching as new red markers appeared on the holographic battlefield. Vorik ships. Invasion forces. They were coming. She turned to her officers, her face unreadable. They think we're prey. Her gaze flickered toward the underground facilities where Project Revenant was awakening. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. They're about to find out they're wrong.
The invasion fleet descended through the planet's atmosphere, their warships forming an unbreakable wall of firepower. Massive carriers, bristling with weapons, cast shadows over the ruined cities of Earth. In the command bridge of the flagship, Supreme Commandant stood tall, his 4 yellow eyes narrowing as he observed the tactical displays before him. Everything was proceeding as expected. The humans had no fleet left to oppose them, no planetary defenses strong enough to repel the overwhelming force. The war was all but won. All units, commence planetary assault, growled, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. Crush the last of their resistance. Down on the surface, dropships deployed squadrons of genetically engineered monstrosities, towering biomechanical brutes bred for a single purpose, extermination. Alongside them, elite shock troopers fanned out, plasma rifles humming with deadly energy as they advanced through the ruined cityscope. Their sensors detected no resistance. No soldiers, no vehicles, nothing. It was too easy. Commandant, our scans show no significant defensive positions. One of the captains reported over comms. The humans are either surrendering or hiding like the pathetic creatures they are. Bared his fangs in a grin. They are broken. Proceed with the cleansing. But then, the lights in the dropships flickered. Their sensors glitched. A wave of static hissed through their comms. The air itself grew heavy. And then, the screaming began. The assault forces, confident and unchallenged, suddenly found themselves under attack by something they couldn't see. The first squad was torn apart in seconds, their bodies flung like ragdolls into the burning wreckage of their own landing craft. Red eyes glowed from the shadows. Figures, inhumanly fast, moved between the ruins, striking before they could even react. A warlord, his body encased in heavy, span around to find one of his men being dragged into the darkness. A wet crunch followed. Then silence. Regroup. Form a defensive. Something huge crashed down from above, landing with enough force to crack the street beneath it. The warlord turned, plasma blade drawn, only to see a towering figure standing before him. It was not human. Not entirely. The creature's body was wrapped in blackened armor, its structure something between matter and living flesh. Its arms ended in claws, its posture predatory, its glowing red eyes locking onto the warlord. The soldier raised his weapon to strike. It moved, faster than his mind could process. A single slash, and his shattered like glass. Pain fled for the briefest moment before everything faded to black. From the warships above, commandants watched in horrified silence as their forces were systematically annihilated. The tactical feeds went dark. The dropship crews reported monsters tearing through their legions, cutting down even their strongest warriors without effort. Commandant, a panicked officer shouted over comms. We are sustaining catastrophic losses. The enemy, they are not human. Eyes widened as he watched the battle unfold in. The humans had deployed something new. Something that even could not match. He had expected an easy extermination. Instead, his elite forces were being hunted. Impossible, hissed. Humans do not possess this level of technology. But as more reports came in, the truth became clear. The humans had changed. They had become something else. In the ruins of what was once a human city, Project Revenant moved like shadows through the streets, their bodies adapting, evolving, reacting faster than they could track. One of a monstrosity armed with plasma cannons, turned to unleash its firepower, only for a Revenant soldier to leap onto its back, rip through its armor, and tear out its neural core with its bare hands. From watched as hundreds of warriors fell in mere minutes. He had underestimated the humans. He had thought them weak, thought that their desperate bravado was just another futile display of defiance. But now he understood. The humans had been holding something back. They had been waiting. And now, they had unleashed their monsters. A new message flashed across the command screens, overriding their communications, forcing its way into their systems. It was a live feed from Earth's war room. And there, standing at the center of it all, was General Helena Grayson. Her expression was cold, merciless. "Is this what you wanted, Commandant?" she asked. Behind her, live footage played, showing warriors running, screaming, as the revenants cut through them like predators in a slaughterhouse. One of the alien warlords fell to his knees, begging for mercy before being silenced by a swift, calculated strike. "You thought we were weak," Grayson continued, her voice calm and deliberate. "You thought you were the apex predators. But you never stopped to ask yourself one thing." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes glinting. "What happens when prey stops running?" The transmission cut. And at that moment, for the first time in his life, Supreme Commandant felt fear.
Zalroth's hands clenched into fists as he watched the massacre unfold on the screens before him. The Vorik were not simply losing. They were being hunted. Their once mighty warriors, their engineered war beasts, their towering machines of destruction. None of them stood a chance. The human so-called monsters were beyond anything he had ever encountered. Faster, stronger, unstoppable. The battlefield, which should have been painted with human blood, was instead littered with the shattered bodies of Vorik elites. Entire squads had gone dark, their last transmissions nothing but screams and static. The shadows of the ruined city seemed alive, moving with predatory grace as something. Many things moved through them. Project Revenant had been activated, and Zalroth now understood the meaning of the human general's warning. No more mercy. From the command bridge of the Dreadfong, the Vorik warlords stood in silent horror. They had mocked the humans, laughed at their desperate threats. But this was not war. This was an extermination, and for the first time in Vorik history, it was their kind that was being wiped out. "Commander," one of the officers stammered, his voice shaking. "We need to retreat. We need to regroup." Zalroth snapped his gaze toward the trembling officer. "No, we do not run from lesser creatures." Another Vorik warlord turned toward him, his expression one of barely restrained panic. "Lesser creatures? Look at them. Our weapons barely slow them down. Our war beasts are being torn apart. These are not humans. They are something else." Zalroth growled in frustration. It was true. The humans had changed. Their soldiers no longer moved like soldiers. They moved like predators, faster than a Vorik's enhanced reflexes, more durable than even the Dominion's war machines. They were a perfect fusion of technology and biology, a nightmarish blend of cybernetic enhancements and genetically altered ferocity. Their red glowing eyes pierced through the smoke, emotionless, focused, relentless. On the battlefield, a Vorik biotitan, one of the most devastating creatures ever created, roared as it engaged a lone revenant in combat. Standing nearly 20 feet tall, the Vorik beast's armored exoskeleton was said to be impenetrable. It lashed out with plasma-enhanced claws, tearing through the crumbling remains of human buildings, searching for its prey. The revenant did not run. It did not hesitate. It moved. In a blur of motion, the cybernetic warrior leapt onto the biotitan's back, avoiding a deadly swipe within human speed. The creature roared, twisting and thrashing in an attempt to shake the revenant loose. But it was too late. Clawed hands tore into the biotitan's armored hide. Flesh and cybernetic plating ripped apart, sending black ichor spilling onto the ground. The biotitan howled in agony, staggering forward. The revenant showed no mercy. It plunged its arm deep into the titan's skull, gripping something vital. With a single, sickening twist, the biotitan collapsed. Dead. From the Dreadfong, Zalroth exhaled sharply. One revenant. One. And it had brought down one of the Vorik's strongest war beasts without breaking a sweat. Panic spread among the Vorik ranks. The once feared warriors were breaking formation, some attempting to flee, others firing wildly at shadows. Their weapons couldn't lock onto targets fast enough. The revenants were too quick, their bodies adapting in real time, phasing between enemy fire like wraiths. What little resistance the Vorik had left was crumbling. "Commander," an officer pleaded, "we must withdraw before." "Enough!" Zalroth roared, slamming his massive fist onto the control panel. The Vorik had never lost a war. Never. His pride would not allow them to run from mere humans. His claws danced over the ship's command console. Activate the singularity cannon. The room went silent. Even the Vorik officers turned to him in shock. Commander, one of the officers hesitated. That weapon, if we fire it on the battlefield, it will. I know what it will do, Zalroth snapped. His expression hardened. If we cannot defeat these monsters in combat, we will erase them from existence. In the skies above the battlefield, the Dreadfang's central weapon systems began to charge. The Singularity Cannon, a forbidden Vorik superweapon, was capable of creating a gravitational anomaly so intense that it would consume everything within a 50-mile radius. No enemy, no matter how powerful, could survive the collapse of reality itself. Zalroth watched the energy levels climb. The humans had forced his hand. They had pushed too far. Then something moved. A revenant, faster than the eye could track. Had already boarded the ship. It stood at the entrance of the Dreadfang's bridge, its dark form partially obscured by shadows, its glowing red eyes locked onto Zalroth. The Vorik warlords froze, their instincts screaming at them to run. The Revenant stepped forward, unfazed by the atmosphere of the ship, unaffected by the low gravity. Zalroth's mandibles clenched. He drew his plasma blade, his fangs bared in defiance. You will not win. The Revenant didn't respond. It didn't need to. It simply moved. Faster than thought. Faster than death. And the battle for the Dreadfang had begun.
Zalroth had never known fear. Not true fear. He had waged wars across countless worlds, crushed civilizations beneath the might of the Vorik Empire, and faced horrors that had shattered lesser beings. But now, standing on the bridge of the Dreadfang, with the red-eyed specter of death closing in, he understood what fear truly was. The Revenant was silent as it advanced, its movements measured, deliberate, like a predator savoring the inevitable kill. Zalroth tightened his grip on his plasma blade, his mandibles clicking in frustration. The Vorik warlords around him had already lost their nerve, their bodies frozen in instinctual terror. He had no such luxury. He was supreme commander of the Vorik Dominion, and he would not bow to a single human, no matter what monster they had become. "Kill it," Zalroth growled, his voice sharp as a blade. The Vorik elite guards, trained for centuries in close-quarters combat, sprang into action. Plasma rifles fired, their bright blue streaks cutting through the dimly lit bridge. The Revenant moved, not dodging, not reacting, but anticipating. The shots passed through empty air, hitting nothing. Before the Vorik could adjust their aim, the creature was among them. One guard didn't even have time to scream. The Revenant's clawed hand punched through his chest plate, the armor offering no more resistance than paper. A sickening crunch echoed through the bridge as the soldier was ripped in half, his blood misting the air. The next warrior swung his plasma blade in a desperate arc, only for the Revenant to catch the weapon mid-strike. With a single twist of its wrist, the blade shattered, and in the same fluid motion, the creature drove its knee into the warrior's skull. The force sent the Vorik's broken body crashing through a console, sparks flying in all directions. The remaining guards hesitated. Their training told them to fight, but their instincts screamed at them to run. They had never faced something like this, something beyond even their worst nightmares. Zalroth roared in fury. "Fight, you cowards!" But it was already too late. The Revenant disappeared in a blur of motion. A Vorik officer turned just in time to see two glowing red eyes emerge from the shadows behind him, right before his head was torn from his shoulders. The last warrior managed to fire a shot point-blank into the Revenant's torso, only to watch in horror as the wound sealed almost instantly. The Revenant tilted its head, almost as if amused, before plunging its arm through the soldier's throat. The bridge fell into silence. Zalroth stood alone, his elite warriors reduced to butchered corpses in less than 30 seconds. For the first time in his long, blood-soaked life, he was alone. The Revenant slowly turned toward him, stepping over the fallen bodies with eerie calm. The dim emergency lights cast its figure in an unnatural glow, making it look less like a soldier and more like a demon pulled from the void. Zalroth clenched his plasma blade tighter, forcing the fear away. He had fought gods before. He had burned entire worlds to the ground. He was not some weak-willed officer. He was Vorik. With a snarl, he lunged, bringing his blade down with all his strength. The Revenant caught the blade. With one hand. Zalroth barely had time to process the impossibility of it before his weapon disintegrated in the creature's grip. The nanites woven into its flesh reacted instantly, absorbing the energy, turning the weapon's power against him. The next thing he knew, a clawed hand wrapped around his throat. He struggled, but it was futile. The revenant lifted him effortlessly off the ground, holding him there as if he weighed nothing. Its grip tightened, its glowing red eyes unreadable, cold, unfeeling. For the first time, Zalroth felt truly powerless. A voice crackled over the ship's speakers. It was General Grayson. "Commander Zalroth," she said calmly, watching the live feed from the human war room. "I told you. You should have left when you had the chance." The revenant didn't speak. It didn't need to. It simply tilted its head and waited. Zalroth gasped, his vision blurring as the pressure on his throat increased. His powerful limbs flailed, but it was pointless. He could feel the end closing in, his body failing, his empire crumbling around him. "Mercy!" he choked out. The revenant paused. Grayson exhaled softly on the other end of the transmission. "You were given a warning, Commander." The revenant's grip tightened. "You didn't listen." A sharp crack filled the bridge. Zalrotha's body went limp. The revenant dropped him like discarded trash. The supreme commander of the Vorik Dominion, one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy, was dead. The ship's crew, still watching from the security feeds, panicked. Some fled, some begged, others simply stood frozen, knowing there was no escape. Back in the war room, General Grayson turned to her officers. The Vorik fleet, still orbiting Earth, had just lost its leader. Their chain of command was shattered. "Patch me through to all Vorik channels," she ordered. A moment later, her voice echoed across every Vorik vessel, every comm link, every remaining enemy stronghold. "This is General Grayson of Earth. Your supreme commander is dead. Your invasion has failed. You have two choices: surrender now and live, or stay and die screaming." For several agonizing moments, there was silence. Then, across the entire Vorik fleet, ships began turning, powering down weapons, broadcasting surrender codes. The war was over. Grayson exhaled, staring at the live feed one last time. The revenants, still standing among the dead, had proven humanity was no longer just a species fighting for survival. They were something else now. Something the Vorik, and the rest of the galaxy, would never forget. And Earth's final warning had been heard.